Herbert Hoover was a Republican elected president in 1928. The Great Depression began during his administration. Many were discontent with Hoover's hands-off approach. He did not want to raise taxes to give direct relief and aid to struggling Americans. He was afraid this would make people dependent on the government. He felt the government should get out of the way and let the free market work out the Great Depression on its own. Villages of homeless people in shacks were nicknamed Hoovervilles, and Hoover's tension with World War I veterans called the Bonus Army tarnished his political popularity. FDR, a Democrat, defeated Hoover for the presidency in the election of 1932. While Hoover wanted the government to get out of the way in the Great Depression, FDR felt the government had to be involved and intentional to fix the bad economy. The New Deal in 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Democrat and governor of New York, was elected president of the United States. The New Deal, FDR offered a New Deal like in cars. He felt the hands-off approach of the Republicans had failed and wanted to try another approach. FDR wanted direct relief for the needy to be paid for with taxes. He also wanted to make rules to enforce financial reform. In other words, he wanted the government to act like a strict referee for the stock market, yet to pay for the New Deal, FDR was gonna have to spend taxpayer money. The first 100 days, FDR claimed immediate action was needed. During his first 100 days, from March 9th to June 16th of 1933, FDR got Democrats in Congress to pass the New Deal legislation and drifted away from the hands-off approach of past Republican leaders. Then FDR signed the New Deal legislation into law. This was the first time in history that the government tried so aggressively to fix an economic downturn. National Industry Recovery Act established the PWA, Public Works Administration, and the NRA. Entire purpose was to regulate the industry to increase prices. National Recovery Administration 1933 goal was fair practice and to set prices for businesses, establishes minimum wage and maximum hours. Last 2 years, Public Works Administration, PWA, government spent $6 billion to fund this. Lasted 10 years from 1933 through 1943. 34,000 projects, builds the Lincoln Tunnel and LaGuardia Airport, the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, known as the Wages and Hours Bill, 40-hour work week, child labor is prohibited. Federal Housing Administration, a new agency to help people obtain mortgage loans from banks added by FDR because of the increase in foreclosures during the Great Depression. Homeowners Loan Corporation, similar to the Federal Housing Administration, tries to help homeowners from defaulting on their loans. This is to prevent foreclosures, introduces the idea of a 15-year mortgage. Agricultural Adjustment Act, an attempt to increase the price paid to farmers for their goods. Wheat, cotton, corn, hogs, rice, tobacco, and milk. Reconstruction Finance Corporation, established in 1932. The goal is to protect the economy by government intervention. Government gives out loans to banks, railroads, and businesses. This keeps the economy stimulated and flowing. The government creates jobs, like with the Hoover Dam. FDR wanted to pursue government projects that would create jobs for the unemployed and improve the economy. The Civilian Conservation Corps built roads, planted trees to stop soil erosion, and did other jobs. Millions of trees were planted to help prevent a future dust bowl. The CCC wasn't just about work relief, but building character and self-improvement. Men who were out of work could come to places like Tennessee to work for the government in various various New Deal projects by planting trees. The CCC helped to prevent a future Dust Bowl. It also gave men jobs who were out of work. Civil Works Administration in 1933 and 1934, lasting only 4 months, creates mainly construction jobs. The government spends $200 million a month to fund the CWA. 4 million Americans are employed. Banks and the New Deal, the Emergency Bank and Relief Act reopened good banks and delayed the opening of struggling banks. FDR began radio addresses to personnel, address the nation, and reassure many who had lost faith in banks. FDR used the technology of radio to gain support for the New Deal and encourage people to start using banks again. In 1933, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation was created and guaranteed a customer $5,000 in the bank. Even if banks close today, this amount is $250,000. People were afraid to put their money back in banks because when the banks crashed, many lost everything. The New Deal created FDIC to guarantee people would get their money back to a certain amount if their bank failed. The stock market and the New Deal, the Federal Securities Act created rules for the stock market. The Securities and Exchange Commission enforced rules as a referee for the stock market. Entities like these prevented people with inside information from manipulating the market, known as insider trading. The government and agriculture, the Agricultural Adjustment Act, it planned to lower production and pay farmers not to plant crops. FDR ordered the slaughter of pigs to prevent their consumption. He wanted to destroy food surpluses. Many protested. This was destroying food. FDR asserted that as long as supply was too great, farmers could not reap profits. A low supply would make farming profitable again. More New Deal policies, the National Initial Recovery Act and IRA established rules for industry and officially made unions legal. Decreased in power because citizens asserted union activities were communist in nature. The Civil Works Administration gave money to build schools and community buildings. During the era of the New Deal, unions became stronger and more prevalent.
National Labor Relations Act, Wagner Act, guaranteed the right of private sector workers to form unions, collective bargaining with their employers, strike if necessary.
Education and the New Deal through the Civil Works Administration. The government built thousands of schools, paid 50,000 rural teachers, and built over 1 million miles of roads. This immediately created jobs for the unemployed and built infrastructure for the United States. The goal was to provide jobs for the construction of these buildings and ensure the upcoming generation was educated.
Direct relief for the needy, the Federal Emergency Release Administration,
FERA,
gave food, clothing, and other goods to the unemployed, elderly, and disabled.
FDR used deficit spending, spending more money than the government has, kind of like a federal credit card to achieve these goals. Fiat money in 1933, FDR takes the U.S. off the gold standard to a money system that isn't backed by a commodity such as gold or silver. Money backed by a commodity was deemed more trusting. The government can only print so much since they have a limited amount of gold.
Sometimes you need more money printed to oil the machine, get the economy going again. Under the gold standard, you can't just do that. We use the fiat money system today. Works Progress Administration 1935 takes over for the Federal Emergency Relief Administration. Helps artists, musicians, and actors. Hires unskilled workers for public works projects in 8 years. Provide jobs and income to over 8 million men, women, and youth. Opposition to the New Deal. FDR faced criticism and support for the New Deal. Many liberals asserted the New Deal would rescue the United States from the Great Depression and revive the economy. Many conservative Republicans argued FDR went too far and guided the United States towards socialism and a government with too many regulations and taxes. Some people thought the New Deal was a good thing that would take the United States toward economic recovery. Others thought it was a negative thing and that FDR was becoming a dictator. Huey Long, nicknamed the Kingfish because of his slogan, every man a king, but no one wears a crown. 40th governor of Louisiana. 1928, 1932, U.S. Senator. 1932, 1935, assassinated in 1935. Vocal critic of FDR. FDR ended up using some of his ideas. The Supreme Court began to challenge the New Deal by declaring aspects of it unconstitutional. FDR responded by filling positions on the court with judges who backed his views. The system of checks and balances meant each branch could challenge the power of the other. FDR versus the Supreme Court. The actions of FDR were unique. Never in history had a president tried so intentionally to manipulate the economy. In 1935, the National Industry Recovery Act was ruled unconstitutional. The court said only the legislative branch could order the building of structures that required building codes. In 1926, the court ruled that the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933 was a state matter and could not be enforced by the federal government. Judicial Procedures Reform Bill. In 1926, FDR wanted to back the court. Essentially, a majority of the Supreme Court justices were not on his side. He wanted to add justices who were stacking the deck in his favor. The bill was never voted on, but has been brought up again in recent years as something the president could do if they have control of the House and the Senate. FDR changes the Supreme Court in the United States government. If the Supreme Court declares an action unconstitutional, it must cease. Yet the president gets to select the Supreme Court justice. In 1927, FDR appointed a liberal Hugo Black to the Supreme Court. This gave FDR a majority, and then the court backed FDR's New Deal. Minimum wage and Social Security, the Rural Electrification Act, REA, brought electricity to rural farm areas. In the early 1940s, less than half of farms had electricity. By 1949, 90% did. In 1928, legacy of FDR's New Deal during the first term of FDR. The New Deal did not gain the level of economic achievement he had hoped it would gain. However, there was